So, welcome to the next session, titled How Do Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Shape Our Landscape? We start with the first speaker. Another speaker is still to arrive. Dr. Georgi Shakirin, Senior Scientist, Clinical Application Research, Philips, close by in Aachen, in the research laboratories. He will speak to us on adaptive intelligence, bridging clinical excellence and the power of AI. Dr. Shakirin, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and thank you for inviting me for this session. It's a pleasure to talk about this, and actually the idea of my talk is to bring a bit of overview of where do we stay and which kind of problems we are going to solve with AI in the healthcare area, and also looking a bit of details where we stay now, basically. So are we still in the research phase? Do we have some applications which are already working, and how does it look like when we look into the perspective? So first of all, let's look at the healthcare landscape and think a bit about what kind of trends and challenges we have in general. So what happens now in the healthcare? So and there are some really amazing facts to see and to know. For example, it's a bit surprising, but it was a study done beginning of 2010-11 that actually the time to duplication of the healthcare knowledge goes from 50 years in 1950 to just 73 days in 2020. That means every basically 2-3 months the knowledge in the healthcare area will be duplicated. It also means that things which our students are now learning in the university, in the medical schools, they will be obsolete when they will finish. Yeah, so that's a fact. And another problem is, of course, that if medical knowledge duplicates every 73 days, it's not possible anymore to keep everything in your head. Yeah? Another thing is we see that on each and every patient more and more data is collected, and it's heterogeneous. So we get actually by any kind of examination of the patient more and more data. Yeah? And just looking to our Philips network and landscape, per year we collect more than 18 petabytes of different data which are processed in our machines, and that's only Philips. Yeah? Then looking also to how the medications and the therapies are developed, we see that therapy becomes more and more personalized, right? So in last year there were 46 new drugs accepted by FDA. Just in 1 year, yeah, but it's only drugs. So we also look to different therapies. The number of therapy options grow. That means the patient has, of course, now more choices to be treated, but it makes also the decision on which therapy is suitable for which patient much more difficult in that sense. Also, there are rising pressure on the healthcare providers in order to provide healthcare in a more efficient way and also be more effective operationally. That's called value-based healthcare, and actually it's not more like you get money per patient treated, but it's much more that you get money per successful treatment of the patient, that at least on the same level as the medium outcome for this kind of patients. And also we see, and there are also analyses done that there is a significant workforce shortage in the healthcare. So it was predicted that by 2035 there will be almost 13 million positions in healthcare which will not be filled. Yeah? So that means that there will be much more pressure on the personnel who is in the hospital, much more data and things to be analyzed, and that's also very challenging. So just a small example from radiology, because I'm mostly in the medicine area. I'm mostly looking to the radiology part. So this is how the complexity of the data processing rises. Yeah. So you see that what radiologist is doing now or did before, when he saw the tumor in the liver, for example, he just did a kind of line measurements in order to assess the tumor size just on the image, and that was it. Yeah? So basically it's a simple measurement of the anatomy. If you look further, more and more methods are coming to assess tumor in more detail. So not only looking to the morphology of the tumor, but also looking to the biological properties and biological functionality of the tumor. For example, on the next image, you can see that using some specific imaging techniques and also some specific image processing techniques, we now can look into tumor physiology. Means we can, for example, figure out the areas which have a lot of perfusion, which means vital tumor, and also figure areas which do not have perfusion, means necrosis, and they don't anymore have any clinical meaning. And if you look to the therapy follow-up cases, for example. Looking further, so we can also apply some more complicated image processing techniques and extract more features from the imaging, which bring you, of course, much more information in order to make a decision what kind of therapy to apply for this patient, and if patient is responding to therapy. But the problem with that, of course, is that if you can assess this image by eye and maybe this too, this is not possible anymore. It's too complex. It's too much information in this image, and just human eye cannot really quantify the image and make any conclusions on that. That also means, with complexity of the image processing and imaging rising, we also need the methods which will help radiologists to assess this kind of images. And of course, looking to the future, we can combine everything and look into the neural networks and to artificial intelligence to support all of this. Yeah, so how we see artificial intelligence then in clinical research. So we see that there is a need there, and the main factors which drive this in the clinic is, first of all, it's not expensive anymore to have a deep learning net model running in your hospital, because the cost of the computation is decreasing. Yeah, so you can buy now the processing power much cheaper than 5-10 years ago. Also, there is increasing push for precision medicine. As I said, that there are many more therapy options. And of course, you want to be sure that the patient you treat is the right patient for this particular therapy. And of course, the data collection and the amount of data rises, that also will help to make the artificial intelligence algorithms more reliable. And if you look to the artificial intelligence, so basically if you want to build an algorithm or a model, you actually usually need to look at the three large things. First of all, the structured data. So of course you cannot just say I take any data and I do something and I get my artificial intelligence algorithm up and running. So here, in order to get a good algorithm, you need to have a good data as an input. So you have basically to have the data collected, the data looked by many doctors separately, in order to give to generate so-called ground truth, so opinion about this data and conclusions done by men. Also, very important is to have interdisciplinary teams working together. So that's what we see, and how we work also in Philips is that we work together with doctors, with IT specialists, and with data scientists. Only in this case, combining the different specialities, you can achieve good results in a fast and robust way. And of course, if you speak about artificial intelligence and deep learning algorithms, you need to have a special IT infrastructure. So that also requires quite a lot of efforts from the hospital IT. If you say now I want to be digital, I want to go with artificial intelligence, you also need to have in mind that you have to have your head of your IT in the boat and dramatically change your IT infrastructure. So that's also important to have in mind. And if you look to the process of artificial intelligence, so if you say now I want to have something working, that's actually two phases which you need to go. First is so-called research phase, where you have an idea what kind of problem you want to solve with your algorithm. And then you start with collecting of your historical data. Then you choose your machine learning algorithm, and then you create a model. And when you have the model, then you go to so-called execution or inference phase, where basically the users use your model on the real-time data and they use your created models, and basically they do a prediction based on these models. And this approach then will support in their day-to-day life. So if you now look a bit in details of this research phase, yeah. So what kind of problems we have? That's actually quite a lot of things you have to think about. So first of all, how you collect and prepare the data, yeah. So you run your hospital, you run your practice, and now you want to do some artificial intelligence study. You need to collect your data, and you need to collect it from the running systems, and you need to prepare it and normalize and look to the quality and do annotations. Yeah, so that's quite a lot of work which has to be done, and also it's not so easy, and it requires a lot of efforts. Yeah, so I think if you look to the IT or to artificial intelligence research, it's about 80% of the time which you spend collecting and preparing the data. Then, of course, the next question you can ask is how to use this data to train my model. Yeah, so then you have to choose one of existing models or develop your own. Of course, there are many tools now, also open source tools in the area. So you can use one of the framework provided by our by Google, for example, or by Amazon, or by other large companies, which are open source and easy to use. And then you create your model. But that's, of course, not the end of the game. First, you need to validate it locally, and then also validate it with maybe some external partners to be sure that the model really works on the population data, which a lot of people, of course, forget. Yeah. So, and only then you can claim, okay, my model works now on and it's reliable to answer one or another clinical question. And then you go to the more or less last step of your journey. It's deployment of the model and testing it in a real life. So that also requires then another infrastructure, because if you deploy the model, then you need to integrate it into the running hospital environment. So, and basically, that means that actually we have to look at kind of end-to-end solution, which allows you to go through all the steps, starting from the preparation of the data, annotation of the data, developing of the data science and machine learning models, validation, and then deployment into the real hospital environment. Actually, also in Philips, we are investing quite a lot exactly to cover this end-to-end process. So we have also, that's quite unique with us, we have the research platform covering all the steps, which also customers can buy. So we really see quite high value in order to provide this end-to-end infrastructure for people who want to do a research in the AI area. So that's quite important, and that also actually saves a lot of time for the hospitals or data scientists who work, because they don't need to do the basic work again and again. So we provide a platform, and people can just use it and do the work, the real work, developing the models. Yeah, this is how we see this infrastructure. So on the left side, you see the typical hospital infrastructure, and basically what we do with our infrastructure, we connect it to the hospital. And the first important component is so-called study data management component, where we can store any kind of data. That's also important, because in the hospital, usually the systems are not able to store any kind of data. So that includes the imaging data, some clinical data about patient population data, and all kind of things. And the database we use for the machine learning part is able to store all this together, and basically then you can get a full view on your patient from just a single point of contact. So another part is then what we call front-end applications. So this is the user interfaces to our platform, where the radiologist or other doctors can do annotations, can look at the data, also can do validations of the models, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and last but not least is the machine learning part itself. So this is the hardware infrastructure, basically, which allows you then at the end of the day to do your training of your model. So that's as you see, includes some open source packages usually, and should be scalable, should use some graphic processing units behind that in order to be able to work on really data consuming and time consuming machine learning tasks. Yeah, the next phase when you have your model trained is the execution phase, where you really then go through the, you integrate your model in the hospital, and then you start to work with real data, and you get then some results, and you use these results then in your clinical routine practice. And if you look now to the areas where we can use artificial intelligence, it's also quite important to understand. So usually what we speak about is this part, so that machine can help us to do diagnosis or can say us which treatment to use, but that's of course the most complex part in all the story. So there are also, we see a lot of applications which much less complex, but they really help doctors in the day-to-day life. For example, we see a lot of applications which are in the operational excellence part. For example, to check your data on consistency, or to check your images, is it good enough or they're bad quality, and immediately get feedback to the technologists or technicians that this patient should be rescanned because image quality is too bad to go further for the diagnosis. And all these kind of things can be solved also by machine learning. And because it's operational, it's much more easy to integrate to the hospital as to compared to the complex diagnostic machine learning algorithms. So another part is which is in between. It's what we call automatic segmentation in radiology. For example, if you want to segment an organ or a tumor automatically, this is also where you can really rely on artificial intelligence and machine learning already right now. And then at the end of the day, of course, the most complex application, which are still not so much in the practice, is to look to diagnosis, that machine does diagnosis, or at least proposes some diagnosis, and also looks to the choice of the therapy and assesses the therapy results. In all these areas, there are already a lot of publications in the field, but yet not so many applications which are used in clinical practice. Of course, that is a long process which takes time. Yeah, so one example where we also did a quite comprehensive study together with our clinical partners. The idea we had is to try to detect and automatically segment the brain tumor in the patients. And there we went through so we decided to do it completely automatically. So basically the patient is scanned, and then the algorithm runs through and says, okay, in this patient first we detect the tumor, and then we also segment not only the tumor as a whole, but also some important compartments of the tumor, like necrotic areas, like the areas which are really vital parts of the tumor. And we did it based on the publicly available Deep Medic network. So we trained the network on 220 cases. And as you see, the performance of the machine was comparable to performance of the radiologist. So basically, if 2 or 3 radiologists do the same job, they also have a bit different opinions on the same case. And exactly in that way, we also achieved the same kind of result on our machine learning approach. And also, interestingly, the same trained network can be applied also to different tumor types. So we did it for glioblastoma, which is a very aggressive tumor in the brain. But we also did it, sorry, there is something is going wrong with and we also did it for meningioma, which is less aggressive, but also a brain tumor. And it's very nice. So actually, we see that in this particular application, we can really achieve more or less the performance of the radiologist. Of course, it doesn't mean that in this case doctors should completely rely on this kind of approach, but this will definitely save a lot of time for radiologists, because the hand segmentation of such a case takes around 10 to 30 minutes. And the deep learning network will work just in a minute, maybe 2, and then radiologists can check the results and maybe correct. Maybe totally it will take 5 minutes, not more than that, and it will save a really lot of time for people to do this routine job. So another example is which is also very exciting, I think. Sorry. No. So is computational pathology, of course, because it's very difficult and I would say even boring job to evaluate the pathology slices by hand or by eye. And of course, it would be very nice to have an automatic software which will segment on the digitalized slices the tumors, for example. Yeah. So and also there are already such a software in the field, which again can help a lot and save a lot of time to pathologists to do some analysis on the images automatically. Again, making a kind of proposal to the doctor how it can look, and doctor is always in the lead to correct and to adapt the results. And of course, we also see that using this kind of automatic methods of machine learning, we also get much quantitative results compared to radiologists or to other specialties, which tend sometimes to make a qualitative results and not quantitative. Yeah, so these were some examples, and now I want just to summarize that, yeah, we see that AI is coming, definitely. It takes time because it's complicated approach, and actually it also requires a lot of changes in the infrastructure of the users, infrastructure of the hospitals. And we see first of all that it has a potential in different applications from operational part to diagnostic part, and it's coming, yeah, and it needs special IT infrastructure, it's also clear. And our proposal, how we work with our partners, but also with other research hospitals, is that actually we need an end-to-end infrastructure. So we need to connect the AI infrastructure into the hospital environment in such a way that we have a seamless data exchange, that we have also environment for AI model development, and also validation and deployment of the models. And of course now we can see that there are a lot of publications, a lot of research work already done, and the first clinical applications are now approaching clinical routine. So that was a kind of short, very short overview of AI, how we see it. And if there are any questions or discussion, we can start this now. Thank you.
Is this on? I know. So thank you very much. This was really very insightful, and also really to demonstrate the steps that lead to the preparation of what can then be used for the clinical application. And I think it's also why we currently have a debate, and I think we can come back on this, whether in some medical specialities AI may replace doctors. I think what you showed, that there are certain tasks like the quality assurance that you showed, where it's really just a cooperation, a good aid for existing practice. But I think we will nevertheless come back to the other question too. So any comments or questions from the audience? I have a lot of flying microphones to share. Otherwise, I continue. Actually, I have been earlier this year. I have been in HIMSS at the US. You may have heard the largest health IT fair in the world. And at this fair, Google, for the first time, was a very active player with the Google Cloud API, and where they showed examples like, I think that one is now famous, that for looking at the eye background, that you can discriminate whether people have a higher cardiovascular risk or whether they have already cardiovascular disease. I think what's evident and what was also implicit in what you have said is that there's to make any predictions you need a serious training phase, and the training phase leads very good data. I think that was what you have demonstrated. But Google then also said that they are now giving their computing power on machine learning, let's say, for rent. And so as if now in the future a clinician will rent for $550 per hour the Google Cloud. I'm not sure what business models does Philips have to bring artificial intelligence to the market. Is it embedded into other Philips solutions, or will it be an extra service that one can rent? How will it be in the future?
Yeah, so there are several things in your question. I think first of all, at least in Europe and in Germany in particular, are not yet ready for the cloud. So we don't have mechanisms to work with the patient data in the cloud. So that's the state for now. Maybe US is a bit more advanced in that. So actually, the only option that we have is to work on premise. Basically, we install the infrastructure inside of the hospital. And one important thing which I also mentioned in my talk is that you really need to be sure that your solution is connected. Yeah, is connected to the running environment. And of course, we don't see it really then vendor specific, that solution works only with one vendor, either it's Philips or Siemens. You need to be sure that your solution is integrated in the hospital landscape, is usually not a single vendor. Yeah? So there are several standards of communication which you can use. And if your solution is a bit standalone, if doctor needs to make 1, 2, 3 clicks, it just will not be used. So that's our experience. So it should be seamlessly integrated in such a way that you augment the information doctor already has with your machine learning information, and it just appears on his screen for making a decision. But you should not install one more computer on his desktop, look into another monitor. All these things will just not work because they don't have time.
Okay, so it needs integration with the, let's say, main or common infrastructure in the hospital. That's
very important.
What you essentially say. Okay.
Hi. Do you think it will be enough for an algorithm to deploy better results than a radiologist for a complete substitution to occur, or partial substitution?
A substitution of what, excuse me?
Of having the machine learning algorithm defining, okay, this is the diagnosis it makes, being the final call.
Well, I think for now it's not really the goal of the machine learning part. Yeah, so the goal is to try to save time of the radiologist, for example, on the routine work, doing the real work which needs the human brain, so to say. So what you can do is you can do the routine operations like segmentation, like image quality assessment, like proposing of some, for example, in the cancer, you can propose some suggestions on what is cancer and what is not. But final decision is still should be done by people right now, yeah, because it's still very difficult to learn everything which people know, yeah, because it's the healthcare itself. It's not like a precise science, I would say. So you need to really accumulate a lot of knowledge and experience in order to make your decision, and especially in the complex cases, I would say. But our goal is really to give time to clinicians to work on these complex cases and take the easy cases or the routine work, preparation work on the hands of machine learning.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Okay, but so you would there seem to be older specialists around that really say, okay, do not become a radiologist in the future. It will be replaced by AI. So you think this is nonsense, or?
Well, the discussion we hear since 3, 4, 5 years, I don't think it's realistic. Yeah, so. I think we can reduce really a lot of technicians, yeah, in some cases, that we will do a lot of things automatically, but for the decision making in the radiology, for example, I don't see that. So I think it will not happen in the next 10, 20 years.
Okay. What I also find a very fascinating field now for machine learning is what you also mentioned, is histopathology or digital histopathology. Do you have any other, you showed us this one page, do you have any other examples of projects where this is already ongoing?
Yeah, so of course we look at the whole spectrum of the applications, yeah, as you saw. So we look at a lot of onto operational part, yeah, for example, that if you open the case and you have for one single patient maybe 50 images to review, that they are arranged in such a way that you don't need a lot of time to find out what you want to see where, and also that the pre-processing is done already based on the intelligence and maybe your behaviors as a doctor. So it's all prepared for you in such a form that you just do your work. There are a lot of applications or a lot of still algorithms which are in research field, yeah, going to clinical clearance in the area of segmentation of the organs and tumors and so on and so forth. And of course, the holy grail is to look more to the suggestion of the therapy and therapy assessment. But that's, of course, very difficult also taken into account if we now have the personalized medicine. For each subgroup of the patient having the same therapy, it's less and less because you have more therapy options. So, and that makes, of course, the learning part much more difficult, yeah, because you sometimes don't have enough data to answer your question automatically. Yeah, so that's a bit a challenge if you look to the machine learning in a personalized medicine, because there are too many options and it's very difficult then.
So the samples get too small in the end.
Yeah, exactly. The groups get too small. There are many groups and they are small, and then you cannot do any kind of statistically significant conclusions on that.
Okay. Good. So then I think if there are no further questions from the audience, we actually have to close down the session for a moment because the next speaker, Dr. Čaplik, obviously has been withheld at I know that he had an early appointment, but I was expecting him right now. Then come on. So I can proudly announce the next speaker. Thank you very much. Very well. Okay, good. Professor Privatdozent Dr. Čaplik is both engaged in the ORNet Association. You will explain what it is, and working at the University Clinic of Aachen in the Medical Technology Department, and he will speak to us on interoperability as a basis for artificial intelligence and telemedicine. So thank you for being there in time. I just thought we had lost you.
No, you haven't. Thank you very much for this invitation, and it's a pleasure for me to, after you have heard so much about innovations, about the future, and have seen so much about the future innovative solutions, it's my pleasure to go a few steps backwards and to share first the presence that we all have in normal German and European hospitals. We have lots of devices that are creating data indeed, but they do not share the data, and so we have a treasure containing lots of data, but we do not use them in the moment. And this is indeed a problem, because with this data you would be able to create a lot of added values for clinicians, for surgeons, for anesthetists. I have brought with me a few examples that we have created in the last years, partly as mock-ups, partly as ideas, partly even as demonstrators and prototypes, like to use the fused data for a joint HMI, for a central operating room display, for example, displaying the data of all data that are collected manufacturer independent. And this is the most important thing, to do not be dependent on proprietary solutions, but to have the possibility to collect the data from diverse device types and diverse manufacturers, so that small manufacturers are able to enter this market. This is the idea. On the left side you see an integration in a smart glasses where context adaptive information like alerts, like alarms, like some certain values that are interesting in this moment can be displayed. Another example is this kind of dashboard. We called it anesthesia dashboard or even a surgical dashboard. So we have two classes of these this software prototype developed, where you can just combine by drag and drop all the information from the patient monitoring system, from the anesthesia machine, from the ventilator, from sewage pumps, from IT systems, and so on. You see on the left side a large list of devices that are currently found in this network, and you can just select them and choose it in a whole view, in a full view, or in this split view that you can see on the right side. And then not only the devices can be viewed in this individual view, but also the progress of the intervention, on the surgical intervention. On the bottom you can see this bar where the current step of the intervention is displayed. So one of the main advantages of this workflow integration is the context adaptiveness. So all devices, the whole system knows the current step, the current context, so that it is able to display very context relevant information like an intelligent alarm. So the system is not so stupid like now, just saying heart rate high, but it can interpret the current situation and give some intelligent information. And it's more or less the same at the ICU wards. There are at least the same number of devices there creating lots of data, and there is this more or less the same situation, maybe except for the patient PDMS systems. But even for those, the clinic has to integrate all the devices, the proprietary interfaces and so on. So it would be a very good idea to have one joint protocol, to have this data fusion from the hospital information system, PDMS, the devices and so on, to create, like in the operating room, also for the ICU, context adaptive, aggregated and adequate visualization dashboards. Also in the ICU, like in the OR, it's possible to display context adaptive information like checklists, like guidelines, like standard operating procedures, and also the information whether the SOPs are followed or not, whether there is a problem and with not following the SOPs or not. It's also possible to integrate the information into smart watches, smart glasses, like before displayed in the operating room. It's the same. The same would be possible as a vision for other clinical applications, like for the ICU as well. But what's the problem? The problem is the Tower of Babel. All devices are speaking different languages, are using different protocols, so that are not able to communicate, or you have a huge effort to make this integration and to have to spend lots of money and time for that. So that the idea that we have created a few years ago in our ORNet project, and then in the ORNet association, to create an open surgical platform that is able to connect all IT components and medical devices, which are both in subnets with one single middleware in between, so that all devices can speak to each other in one single language. Therefore, we have developed some libraries for the communication between the devices. We have in some we have developed 3 standards that are partly already approved by the IEEE. You can see in the next session we will have a complete session about this topic, so I can just give some advertising information about that, just a few slides. So we will speak about these standards later. The past or the history of our project was a German flagship project called ORNet, which was a research project and which was then continued by an association, so that all aspects, not only the technical aspects, but the legal aspects, the approval aspects, the needs of clinical operators are considered. And this is, in my point of view, the most important thing, that not only the technical issues are considered, but also the legal aspects. So that's all from my side, just a quick overview and a quick advertisement for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any remarks or questions from the audience? Okay, as Dr. Čaplik said, there is another session following this one that will fully dive into the world of ORNet, how it works in detail. We just mentioned it in this session to make the link. To get all those data, of course, you need connected data worlds, let's say it like this, devices and data worlds to bring things together. I think that was also a point that was made by Dr. Shakirin. I think then we are now roughly on time, so I think I can already invite Professor Gernot Marx, representing the host of this session, the German Society of Telemedicine, or one of the hosts, and of course at the same time also from University of Aachen, to speak to us on the lessons learned today on digital health in Europe. So I think you have already been here today, so I do not do a next introduction. Up to you.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Schuk, thank you very much indeed to hand over. And indeed, first of all, let me thank you to be here, to stay here. This is always a very difficult task here within the Medica with this open format, but on the other hand, this is quite into stimulating format here. And secondly, I would like to thank all presenters, and I think we have had many interesting presentations and new ideas, and also to thank you because you have organized here the most parts of this day, and we all know this is not easy, especially as we managed in the end to bring together many experts from the European Union, and this is one lesson really to learn. We have to do it together, and the solution is not a nationwide solution but a EU-wide solution, and we need to think in the end globally, but at least European-wide to be successful and to address all these challenges. What I personally learned here, one thing is always, in the end of the day, all our efforts need to create benefit for the patient. And secondly, we have to all of us are experts in a particular area, let's say. But when I heard the apps and artificial intelligence and telemedicine and so on, so we have different aspects of this digital medicine. And what is very important, I think this was very important of this whole day today, that we have shared the expertise, we had fruitful and constructive discussions, and it's all about the whole, that we bring it under one umbrella and to focus all the different angles towards the solution, because only then we can really extract the benefits which are in the data and in our connectivity in terms of creating a digitalized medicine, which will be a better medicine in 2030 than in 2018. And with this, I thank you very much indeed. Wish you a nice evening here in Düsseldorf or elsewhere, and enjoy the rest of the Medica. You have one day left, and latest until next year at the same location. Thank you very much.